Over 600,000 people go missing every year in the United States. That's a staggering number, but what's even more terrifying is that some of them are never found. No body, no footprints, no final goodbye. Now imagine one of them was your best friend, and all you did was play a game of hide and seek in the woods. Who, or what, took him? Was it a person? An accident? Something darker that doesn't want to be named? Something that watches, waits, and only reveals itself when you think you're safe? I used to laugh at ghost stories. I thought urban legends were just that, legends. But after that night in the forest near Mount Hood, Oregon, I don't laugh anymore. This is not a story I enjoy telling. But it's one that refuses to stay silent. And if you're still watching, you need to hear it too. Stay with me until the end, because every detail will send a chill down your spine. It started like any other weekend escape. 5 of us, me, Marcus, Jenna, Rachel, and Tyler, had driven up to a cabin near the base of Mount Hood, Oregon. The area was remote, surrounded by thick pine forest with no cell signal. Just the way we liked it. Disconnecting from the world, laughing over burnt marshmallows, pretending we weren't slowly drifting apart after high school. Tyler was the one who suggested the game. "Come on," he said, grinning like a devil. "One last hide and seek for old time's sake." Sunset, no flashlights. It sounded stupid, childish even, but we agreed, because Tyler had a way of making dumb things sound fun. He was bold, cocky, and somehow always got us to follow his lead. We drew straws to pick the seeker. I got the short one. I closed my eyes, counted to 50, and when I opened them, everyone was gone. That was the last time I saw Tyler. At first, it was just part of the game. I wandered between trees, laughing when I found Marcus curled behind a log. Rachel popped out from under the back porch of the cabin. Jenna had climbed halfway up a tree like some forest raccoon. But Tyler was nowhere. We called out, first playfully, then urgently, then with fear in our voices. By nightfall, the panic had settled into our bones. We lit every lantern, screamed his name into the trees, even tried the car horn. Still nothing. At sunrise, we called the local sheriff. The official search began that afternoon. Drones, bloodhounds, volunteers. They combed the entire forest radius. What they found? Nothing. Not a shoe, not a thread, not a single broken branch that said, "Someone passed through here." Except for one thing. About 400 yards into the woods, the search team found a tree with a strip of red hoodie fabric snagged high on a branch, about 15 feet up. Tyler had been wearing a red hoodie. I remember clearly, because he said it made him feel like Little Red Riding Hood walking into the wolf's mouth. They brought in thermal drones that night. And the weirdest thing? At 3:47 a.m., one of the drones picked up a heat signature, human-sized, about half a mile beyond the last known location. It moved for exactly 18 seconds, then disappeared. Not faded, not lost in the trees. Just gone. No tracks, no biological evidence, nothing for the dogs to follow. The security cam from the cabin's back porch showed all 5 of us walking into the woods, but only 4 coming back. No glitches, no cuts, just Tyler missing from the returning group. That footage haunted me. I must have watched it 100 times, trying to convince myself he'd slipped past the camera's angle. But he didn't. None of us ever saw him again. People always ask me, was he running away? Did he fake his death? Suicide? And look, I wish I believed any of that. But if you knew Tyler, you'd know that wasn't him. He loved being seen. He hated silence. I know what you're thinking. There's got to be a logical explanation. And maybe there is, but standing in that forest, with the wind whispering things that didn't sound like wind, logic didn't feel like it belonged there. If I could go back to that moment when he said, "Let's play hide and seek," I would have said no. Some places don't want to be played in. Some places play back. And that night, I think something else joined our game. But that was just the beginning. What came after, the sounds, the signs, the things we couldn't explain, was far worse. Let me tell you what happened next. The thing about panic is, it doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in quietly, like mist rolling between trees. At first, you rationalize. Maybe Tyler wandered farther than he meant to. Maybe he found a good hiding spot and fell asleep. Maybe he was messing with us. But when the sun rises and he still hasn't come back, that's when panic stops whispering and starts screaming. The sheriff's department arrived around 9 a.m. They brought in bloodhounds, a small drone team, and 2 volunteer groups. I remember thinking, good, they'll find him in an hour, 2 at most. But by sunset, the mood had changed. The search party had found nothing but trees, and that torn scrap of red hoodie caught high in the branches. I stayed up all night that first night. None of us could sleep. Jenna threw up twice. Marcus kept pacing like a caged animal, muttering, "It doesn't make sense," over and over. Rachel just stared into the woods, her face pale, lips trembling. I kept replaying everything in my head. What direction had Tyler gone? Had I heard anything unusual? Was there something we missed? The dogs hit on something briefly that night, led the search team in a spiral down a rocky embankment. But then they stopped, sat down, and wouldn't move. One of the handlers said he'd never seen dogs freeze up like that. They weren't tired, they were scared. 2 days later, they brought in a K9 cadaver unit and a specialized SAR team with heat sensors and ground-penetrating radar. Still nothing. No remains. No burial sites. Not even disturbed soil. Like the earth had swallowed him whole. On the 3rd day, a breakthrough, or what we thought was one. One of the rangers found something behind an old hunting blind deep in the forest, a small, circular patch of scorched ground, about the size of a kiddie pool. The leaves and pine needles were blackened, but only in that perfect circle. No burn trail, no sign of fire damage spreading outward. It was as if that patch had been flash heated from above or below. They collected soil samples. The results? No accelerants, no trace of fire activity. But the ground was oddly magnetic, strong enough to interfere with nearby equipment. And then came the weirdest part. On the cabin's exterior trail cam, they found a single still frame, captured at 2:19 a.m. on the 2nd night. The camera had been glitching the entire time, static and distortion, but in that one frame, something showed up, a figure, not Tyler. The shape was too tall, too thin, and too wrong. The limbs looked bent at odd angles. The head cocked like a broken mannequin. It stood at the edge of the woods, just watching the cabin, and then, gone. The next frame was blank. The officers dismissed it as an artifact, a trick of the light, a compression error, but I don't think it was. A week passed, then 2. The case hit local news, then regional. A missing teen, last seen playing hide and seek. A tragic accident, most likely, could have fallen down a ravine. They said, wilderness is dangerous, they said, but they didn't see the footage. They didn't hear the woods. You know what haunted me the most? It wasn't the silence, it was the fact that the forest didn't feel empty. After the first week, the police scaled back. The official line, no foul play suspected. Search remains ongoing, but privately, we were told to go home. That it was time to grieve. Time to accept it. But how do you accept something that never had a proper ending? People ask me why we didn't go back ourselves. Why we didn't keep looking. And trust me, we tried. But something about that forest changed after Tyler disappeared. The trails shifted. We'd take the same path twice and end up in different places. The air got heavier the deeper we went. And more than once, we'd hear footsteps behind us, only to turn and see nothing. One day, Marcus looked at me and said, "I don't think we're supposed to find him." And that hit me like a gut punch. Not because I thought he was wrong, but because, deep down, I thought the same. If there's anything I've learned from all this, it's this. Nature doesn't always follow our rules. Some places don't want to be mapped. Some things don't want to be found. And just when we thought it was over, when we finally tried to move on, that's when things started getting worse. Because Tyler's disappearance? That was just the beginning. Let me show you what came next. They say the forest speaks if you're quiet enough. But what if the forest whispers, and you're not alone? After the official search ended, we tried to go back to our lives. School, work, holidays, smiles for the people who didn't ask too many questions. But inside, none of us were the same. A few weeks later, Marcus asked if I'd come back to the forest with him, just once more. Not to search exactly, but to see, to face it, to prove to ourselves that we weren't crazy. We went on a gray, fog-smeared afternoon, just the 2 of us. We hiked back to the area where they found the piece of Tyler's hoodie. That tree, bent, tall, scarred, looked exactly as we remembered it. But this time, there was something else. Tiny piles of stones, arranged carefully, deliberately, circles, Triangles. One had a red button placed right on top. Tyler's? I couldn't be sure, but I remembered he'd always wear that same hoodie, with the missing button on the sleeve. I never said anything to Marcus. That's when we heard it. At first, it sounded like the wind, but then it shifted, low and rhythmic, almost like whispering. Not quite English, not quite human, just below the level of understanding. We froze. Marcus whispered, "Do you hear that?" I nodded, but neither of us moved. Then the trees began to creak, not like from wind, but in a pattern. Like something large was moving, brushing past branches without touching the ground. That's when we ran. Back at the cabin, we checked the trail cam again, and there it was, something we'd missed before. At 3:12 a.m. the night Tyler vanished. The footage shows a brief flicker, 2 frames. No more, of a figure standing at the tree line. Not Tyler. This one was taller, too thin, barefoot, head tilted unnaturally, and the eyes, when zoomed in, reflected white, like an animal's under infrared light. We sent the frame to a local wildlife expert. His response? Not human, not any animal I've ever seen either. Might be a double exposure or glitch. But deep down, we knew it wasn't. A few nights after we returned, Jenna started having dreams. The same one, every night. She was back in the forest, looking for Tyler, but the trees whispered her name. Sometimes, she'd wake up with pine needles in her bed, despite living in an apartment 5 floors up. At first, I laughed it off. Stress, trauma, our brains playing tricks on us. Until it happened to me. One morning, I woke up with a single bloody fingerprint on the inside of my bedroom window. No signs of forced entry. No prints outside, just one, on the inside. I lived alone. I reported it. Police shrugged. Maybe I brushed it by accident. Maybe it was old. Maybe it didn't mean anything. But I know what I saw. Then came the voicemail. Rachel received it first, an unlisted number. No caller ID, just static. And at the end, a low, dragging whisper that said, "You're still playing." She threw her phone out the window. The police dismissed everything as grief. Shared trauma. Mass delusion. Maybe. But there were patterns. Physical signs. Tangible clues that something wasn't just in our heads. Here's the strangest detail no one could explain. In one of the forest's missing persons archives from 2003, I found a hand-drawn map submitted by a boy whose sister had disappeared while camping. He was 10 years old. In the corner of his crumpled paper, he had scribbled what looked like a creature, stick limbs, no face, and a phrase written in childish scrawl. "Don't hide when it's calling." That map had been filed away. Forgotten. Until now. All of it, the symbols, the dreams, the figure in the footage, it felt like pieces of a puzzle too horrible to finish. I wish I could tell you this ended there. But the forest doesn't just take. It waits. It watches. And sometimes, it gives something back. Something that shouldn't have returned. Let me show you what happened 10 years later. There's a point in every mystery where logic starts to buckle under the weight of everything it can't explain. And when that happens, you start looking somewhere you never thought you would, at the old stories. The ones whispered by campfires. The ones people laugh off. Until they're alone in the dark. About a month after Tyler disappeared, I started digging, not through files or forensics, those had run dry, but through something older. Local folklore, tribal records, forgotten pages of town history. That's when I found the name. The Hollow Man of the Pines. It sounded like a campfire tale at first, but the deeper I went, the more the pieces started aligning. According to old logging records from the late 1800s, there were whispers even back then, loggers who refused to work in that part of the forest. They claimed the trees spoke back, that figures were seen moving between trunks with no footprints, that those who wandered alone were found days later, if they were found at all, with eyes wide open and mouths full of pine needles. In 1936, a local trapper named Samuel Lark disappeared for 3 days. When he returned, he had no memory of what happened, but his journal, found years later in an estate sale, was full of drawings of a tall, faceless figure with bark for skin. His final entry simply read, "It lives where we forget." At first, I chalked it up to paranoia. Isolation can do that to people. But then I cross-referenced disappearances near the Lost Pine region over the last century. 17 unexplained missing persons cases. Most of them children or teens. All vanished within a 6-mile radius. Still think it's coincidence? A retired deputy from the 90s reached out after reading a local article one submitted under a pseudonym. He told me something that never made it into any reports. Back in 1994, a teenage girl named Laura Medina disappeared during a school camping trip, not far from where Tyler vanished. After days of searching, the K9 team caught a scent leading into a dense cluster of pines. But about 40 feet in, every dog stopped. They whined, backed away. One even had to be sedated. They found her backpack neatly placed at the base of a tree. Inside, a Polaroid photo, one no one had ever seen before. It was of the group around the campfire. Except, Laura wasn't in it. Instead, a tall, indistinct figure stood behind the group, barely visible in the background. Its limbs didn't look human, and no one remembered anyone else being there that night. The case was closed, presumed lost to exposure, but the deputy had kept a copy of the photo. He mailed it to me. I still have it. I showed it to Marcus. He turned pale. "That's what I saw the night you were counting," he whispered. "I thought it was just a shadow." Was it a ghost? A cryptid? A shared hallucination? Here's what I believe. Some places carry old weight. Not evil, exactly, but ancient, pre-language, pre-human. And we treat these places like hiking spots, photo ops, playgrounds. But the forest doesn't forget. If you listen to enough old-timers around Mount Hood, they'll tell you the same thing. Never play games in the woods after dark. Never call out to the trees. And never, ever, pretend you're alone. Because the hollow man doesn't chase. He waits, he watches, and he only comes when you invite him. We didn't know that, but we do now. And yet, as terrifying as that lore is, nothing prepared us for what came 10 years later. When one of us came back to that forest, and something followed them home. Let me tell you what happened. 10 years. You'd think that'd be enough time to let something go. To let a story fade into the background noise of adulthood. But grief doesn't follow the calendar. And neither, apparently, does whatever lives in those trees. We all went our separate ways after that summer. Jenna moved to California. Rachel got married. Marcus stayed close. But he never quite came back, not really. I could see it in his eyes every time we caught up. That distant, hollow look of someone still listening for whispers that aren't supposed to be there. As for me, I kept my distance from people. Mostly, I stopped going on hikes. Avoided wooded areas. Couldn't even walk past Christmas tree lots without getting a knot in my stomach. I told myself I was over it. But every time a pine branch brushed against my car, or I heard a wind that didn't quite sound right, it was back. Like the forest was breathing on my neck. Then last fall, Marcus called me. He said he was going back. At first, I thought he was joking. But he wasn't. He'd found something buried in his dad's garage. In an old duffel bag from the cabin trip. It was a handheld video camera. The kind we used before smartphones took over. We had all assumed it was lost. But there it was. Dusty. Battery dead. Tape still inside. We charged it. Played it. And there he was, Tyler. Not just in the background or out of frame. Full on, grinning at the lens, filming himself walking deeper into the forest. Saying, "Let's see how far we can go before they notice I'm gone." It was all typical Tyler, playful, cocky. Then the footage cut. The next clip, without transition, was different. The lighting was dim, the angle off, like the camera had been dropped and left recording from the forest floor. There was no sound except wind. Then, after about 40 seconds, something moved across the frame. Not walking, gliding, a shape, long limbs, featureless head, barely human. It passed by, and just before leaving the frame, it turned, as if it knew it was being watched. The clip ended with static. We sent the footage to a friend of mine who works in video forensics. He couldn't find any evidence of manipulation. Said the transition between clips was raw, unedited. The timestamp? 2:47 a.m. The exact time the trail cam from the cabin had glitched out the night Tyler vanished. That tape changed everything. Marcus couldn't sleep after watching it. Neither could I, and then, just 2 weeks later, I got another call from Rachel's husband. Rachel had disappeared. She'd gone for a weekend retreat with friends upstate, forest adjacent. Not far from the Oregon border. She left the cabin alone around dusk to get some air. Never came back. The only thing they found? Her phone, propped upright on a fallen tree. The camera app open, one image captured. In the background, barely visible, stood a tall, thin figure between the trees. Not again. The sheriff's office handled it like all the others. Missing adult. Likely wandered off. Ongoing investigation. But we knew better. It was starting again. That's when Marcus snapped. He sent me one final voice message before going dark. We never stopped playing. That's the truth, isn't it? We didn't end the game. We left it unfinished. And it's still waiting for someone to be it. That was the last time I heard from him. 3 days later, hikers found his backpack just off a trail in the Lost Pine region. Inside was a notebook, water bottle, and a single Polaroid photo. Same forest, same angle, but this time, I was in it. Except I'd never been there. Not since the first time. Not since Tyler. And yet, there I was. Standing in the trees, facing the camera. Somehow, something, or someone, wanted me to come back. So if you're watching this and wondering whether you should ever go into the woods at night, wondering if those stories are just make-believe, let me give you this advice. Don't go back. Don't try to finish the game. Because the forest remembers. And it doesn't care how long it's been. But before we close this chapter, there's one last thing you need to know, something no one has ever talked about until now. Let me tell you what the forest finally gave back. I used to think closure was something you could earn, like if you searched hard enough, waited long enough, pieced together every shred of evidence. Eventually you'd find peace. But sometimes the truth doesn't bring peace. It brings more questions. 2 months after Marcus disappeared, I received a package in the mail. No return address, just my name, handwritten in ink that had slightly bled through the envelope, like it had gotten wet and dried under something heavy. Inside was a flash drive. No note, no explanation. There was only one video file. It was grainy, low resolution, timestamped just 2 days before Marcus vanished. The footage shows him walking alone in the woods, Lost Pine Forest. He's breathing heavily, talking to himself. I just need to see it again. He says, I need to know. At one point, he stops and turns the camera to face himself. He's pale, eyes sunken, his voice shakes. If anyone finds this, Eli. If you're watching, I think we misunderstood everything. It doesn't just live in the forest. It is the forest. It's the wind, the trees, the silence between. It's been here long before us, and it chooses who leaves. The camera turns again, just trees. Then, something in the distance. A shadow steps into frame. Tall and still. It doesn't move, doesn't lunge, just stands, watching. Then the screen cuts to black. I took the flash drive to a local expert. She ran analysis. No signs of tampering, no digital manipulation. The GPS metadata matched coordinates we knew all too well. Then came the strangest part. While scanning the audio track for hidden edits, the program detected sub-audible frequencies below the human hearing threshold. When she visualized the waveforms, they formed patterns, repetitive, rhythmic, almost like a pulse. And in that moment, I finally understood what had haunted us all these years. We weren't just being watched. We were being called. The whispers in the trees? The dreams? The figures in our photos? They weren't accidents. They were echoes, reverberations of something ancient. Something that doesn't chase you, it waits until you come to it. So was it real? Or did we create this monster from the pieces of our guilt? Tyler's disappearance, Rachel's silence, Marcus's obsession. Were we just lost in our trauma? Or had we truly trespassed into something that defied understanding? Here's what I believe now. Not every forest is dangerous. But some are sacred, not in a holy sense, but in an older way. In a way that says, you don't belong here. You never did. And those forests? They don't just hold trees. They hold memory, pain, secrets. They keep what they want. And sometimes, if you listen very closely, you'll hear them whispering it back. I don't tell this story to scare you. I tell it because someone needs to. Because if you ever find yourself walking through dense pines and the wind suddenly goes still, if the birds stop singing, if your phone loses signal and you feel that pull, like something's watching from behind a tree, don't look. Don't listen. And above all, don't play games with the dark. Because once the forest notices you, it never forgets. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. This story isn't just about what happened to us in the forest. It's about how thin the veil really is between what we know and what we refuse to see. Maybe you've heard a story like this before. Maybe you've lived one. If you have, tell me. I want to know. Drop your thoughts, your theories, or your own experience in the comments below. And if you feel like something's been watching ever since, you're not alone. Hit like if this story stayed with you. And subscribe if you want more tales the world forgot, or wished it had. We explore the hidden, the haunted, and the places better left untouched. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and don't go wandering where the trees whisper your name.